Well, hello, amazing, gorgeous you. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here with you. And we have two encouragers here with you. We have Julie Ziglar. Ziglar. Name sound familiar? She's a Ziglar. And we also have me, of course, Dr. Barbara. And I love encouraging you. And I'm so excited to be with you. Let's say hello to Julie, and then we're going to all share to our feeds. And Julie, do you have a phone or something that you can share to your Facebook feed?
Um, yes,
Okay.
I think I can get right on there.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
everyone say hello to Julie. Hi, Julie Ziegler. Ah!
Hey, everybody.
It's
Good to
like
see
I could do
y'all.
the fangirl thing.
That was good. You're good at fangirl.
I
Very
am
good.
so excited to be with you guys. So while Julie shares to all her Facebook feed and her groups and all that, I would like to ask for you guys who are coming in on the replay or you guys who are coming in live with us for the show. And I'm just so excited to be with you to share to your feeds as well. You know that we are starting an encouragement train, right? So think about like back with Soul Train where they used to do the encouragement train. I'm aging myself here, sorry. And so we're going to do an encouragement train by getting this out on all our Facebook feeds because we have royalty when it comes to encouragement here with us today with Julie Ziegler. Yes, yes. So I'm so glad. Hi, Betty. Hi, you glow. Hi, Deborah. Let's see. Hi, Soul Mitchell. Glad to be with you guys. Oh, my friends, my friends. Tim's going to pull up something here in a minute after he shares to all our feeds so that I can also respond to your Facebook comments. So I'd love to know what you're going through, where you're coming in live from, because you guys know when you come on the live show, it's not just me and the guest, even though I'm so excited to talk with Julie and she's going to encourage us and we're going to hear more of her story. But I also want to just be with you. I want to give you a virtual hug. I know that many of you are struggling. Some of you have just started the Hearts Returning Home course today with me, and I'm so excited to have you in the Heart Healing course. If you still want to get in, you can at www.heartsreturninghome.com. And just so happy, happy, happy that we're on this healing journey. Okay, so Julie,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
We've been emailing back and forth. We've been really excited about really kind of meeting in person, encourage you to encourager.
Yes.
So, honesty, like real talk here, as you've been snooping around on the internet, kind of checking
Yes,
me out.
I have.
Yes. So, what have you seen? What are your thoughts?
I've seen that you are a deeply spiritual woman of God who loves people, who loves to encourage people, who is dear to many. So,
I
yeah.
do love to encourage people. But you know what? I snooped around on you too and found the same thing about you, girl. That's why I'm so excited to be with you
Oh,
here
thanks.
today.
Thank you. Thank you.
My friend Julie Ziegler, if you look behind her, she is in a motor coach.
Yes,
Yes.
I am.
Pastor Tim and I have not told you, I don't think, about our motor coach story. We used to have a motor coach that we loved named Sweet Caroline, and then the Lord called us to give it to a missionary friend. And there she goes.
There she goes.
Yep. And my missionary friend was not a UNC fan. And so she had to change it to Sweet Tenacity because we named it Sweet Caroline after UNC.
Oh,
Anyway,
that's,
we
well, I
bless
love,
her.
yes. Well, that's God will put it where He wants it, won't He?
That's
And
right.
I'm glad you were obedient.
Yep.
Let go.
Jesus is so much better than things. Now her ministry purchased it from us, but we had set it up and spent a year really getting it set up. And then the Lord's like, give it away. So Tim especially worked really hard on it. Okay.
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
who was your dad? Tell us about your dad.
Okay. The daddy I grew up with was a pots and pan salesman. He was the 10th child out of 12. His father died when he was 5. His mother never remarried. There were 6 kids still at home, too young to work. And Daddy actually started working before he was 6, selling peanuts on the corner. And then he went to work for Mr. Anderson, putting flyers, grocery flyers on doors. And that man mentored him like a father. And my brother's named after him. Mm-hmm. But Daddy was an upright man. He was always positive, found a way to get things done. He was used to working and working hard. Mm-hmm. But his big dream when he left Yazoo City, Mississippi, was to become a butcher in a small store of his own when he got out of the, he was in the Navy, and it was during World War II. During that time, things changed and he found out about being a salesman, and that's where he got his career start right there. Yeah.
So he was a natural entrepreneur, though.
He didn't mind working hard. He was told that he was not a good salesman at all. He had to learn the art of sales. And Daddy is actually the man who brought a good reputation to a career of salesmanship, because it was about helping people get what they needed. And he changed the whole shyster, opinion of the sales field by talking about and teaching integrity and honesty and helping the whole economy by doing what he did. So he changed the atmosphere. Yeah.
Yes. So his name was Ziglar, and yes. I'm sure all of us have heard of him. He's written so many books, and you have actually co-authored with him, have you not?
Yes, I co-authored Embrace the Struggle with Dad, and that was after he had his fall and had a short-term memory loss. Oh. But by then, he was the motivational speaker that people went to see at the big, great the Get Motivated rallies that they had all over the United States. Everybody else, he was with some amazing people, the presidents, the Bushes, the Colin Powell, and Rudy Giuliani, and the list goes on. But people really wanted to see Dad because he was the encourager of encouragers.
The encourager of encouragers. Wouldn't that be a lovely Wouldn't that be a lovely thing to legacy to live? Oh, Lord, let it be me and Julie and our listeners. Hi, Sherry. Hey, JL. Hey, Michelle. Hey, Cynthia. Hey, Maureen. Hey, Pamela. Hi, Kendra. Hi, Evelyn. I love you guys. And they're coming in from all over the place. Over the place. Our girls are coming in. All right, you guys, make sure you share to your feeds, because we're going to really get into some really deep topics. We're going to talk about grief. We're going to talk about grief and loss, but we're also going to talk about encouragement and how to keep yourself encouraged, which is so important during this time where we're all like, enough April already, right? Like I just started a May Madness sale, a half price on our all access passes to the World Women's Wholeness Summit. And you guys can go to 3wsummit.com and get that. It's half off. But I'm like, enough April. Let's have a May Madness sale. I'm just so done with April. I know the Lord is in every day and all that stuff, but still, right? Yeah. Okay, so thank you guys for sharing. And Catherine says, loved your dad, Julie. And then Pamela says, welcome to my dinner table. So we're so happy to have dinner with Pamela's family.
Yes.
So you were talking to me about some of the struggles that you have had. And what I didn't realize about your story was that your dad became a Christian. You know, he was actually a natural salesperson too for Jesus in a way, that he was a natural evangelist. And he had all this integrity and he encouraged people, and he had some of that honestly. And then he got filled with Jesus, and it was like his superpower, right?
Yes, exactly.
But that happened when you were 17.
Yes. A lot of water under that bridge.
Well, tell us about some of it.
Well, Dad moved us. I got to say, I had a perfect childhood, in my opinion. Just loved growing up in South Carolina, and I was just happy there. I was into good school and good friends. And then Dad got an opportunity to work with a company that would let him train the first 2 days of the week. And then they said, Zig, you can go speak wherever you want, sell your books, whatever you want to do. And it was a great opportunity. Plus, he was tired of flying from South Carolina to California. That's a,
That's a long flight. Mm-hmm.
So we moved to Dallas, and I just turned 13. Literally, we left on my 13th birthday with 2 weeks' notice that our whole life was going to change. Mm-hmm. And I had to call my school. I had run for and won the secretary treasurer position for 8th grade. And that was a big deal, the campaign. And anyway, so I was leaving. I had to leave behind my horse that I had gotten for my 11th birthday. Only I didn't know he wouldn't be coming. I thought he was going to come later, but turned out he didn't get to come.
Hold on. Tim is weeping. Tim trained under the guy who trained under the horse whisperer. So Tim is a horse person at his core. Just to let you know, Pastor Tim is weeping, y'all.
Well, I'll tell you what, that was a very hard loss, because it was the first time. Tell me if I need to turn that off again.
Probably.
Hang on, you guys. I'll be right back.
All right. While Julie Ziglar is turning off her RV AC, tell me, are there any other horse people out there? I have learned a lot about Tim and I have actually really enjoyed talking about the nervous system in regard to horses, because a lot of the things he learned as a horse person, I have learned as a somatic experiencing practitioner and working with trauma. So we'll have to do that for one of our couples coping Sundays. Okay, so you moved to Texas.
We moved to Texas, and I started 8th grade. And South Carolina was like the difference between fashion in Vancouver and Dallas is what Columbia was to Dallas. I was out of style. I had a really thick. Now, listen, I know there's some of you who think I have a really thick accent right now, but believe me, Southern is way thicker than this. This is Texas. So I was ridiculed and I was bullied. And one little football player got a crush on me anyway, and his ex-girlfriend, who was a cheerleader, started a rumor about me. It was so bad that at the end of 8th grade, none of the parents who were putting on the end of year party would invite me. So I was one. There was one other girl who was not invited to that party besides me. And believe me, at that point, I had not earned the reputation I'd been given. But there was a group of kids who were wild, and they told me I could be a part of their group. And I was extremely vulnerable because I had been well accepted where I came from. I was a people pleaser. I was a people person. And I ended up, they said I'd have to go through a initiation. And so I was to meet this boy in a field not far from our home. And I found out years later that another boy had come and hidden in the bushes, but the initiation was that I would lose my virginity, whatever that was. I had no idea what that was. Yeah, so that was my introduction to all of that.
That must have been scary.
It was surreal. It was because I was there, under my own steam, but I really didn't have a concept of what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I didn't run with that crowd particularly after that, but the reputation then was out because the other young man had been there and watched. And I spent the rest of my school years not dating people from my school because I knew what they were going to try because of my reputation. So I hated school. I couldn't wait to get out of school. But I rode my horses. I showed my horse, and I worked. I started working when I was 14. I was busy. I was on the tennis team at school, which I had to quit for bullying about sexual things. And I've still never been to a high school reunion. I just don't have any interest because it was so painful for me.
I guess not.
Yeah.
I mean, as a psychologist, I'm like, don't go.
I'm not going to go. I'm not. There are one or two people who I still know from high school, but I don't really have a desire to do that. And that was how I ended up. I met my first husband at a horse show when I started college. It was that first November. It was a 3-day show, and he asked me if I would show his horses because he was a cowboy and he didn't ride English and jump and do all of that. And he was a horse trader. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, he was a sociopathic horse trader who ended up threatening to kill my parents and make me wish I'd never been born if I didn't marry him. And I was so intimidated and so afraid of him by then that I did. Yeah.
So there's this pattern in your life of kind of freezing in these situations. Yes. And, you know, I see this a lot from different things that can happen early on. And yes. I'm so sorry that you went through that.
Oh, thank you.
I know that a lot of people listening are identifying, and I see this in my office a lot. Yep. And it often does go back to something that happens early on. But
well, for me, I mean, I was molested when my parents went on a trip out of the country, and they hired a couple they had been family friends, and to come and stay with us. They were a young couple, probably 25 or 6, and I was molested by the husband during that time. But I didn't tell anybody because I was told not to tell, and it was our secret and whatever, you know, all the standard stuff you hear. And I didn't realize until years later that you know, that had a lot to do with me somehow feeling obligated to have sex with anybody who wanted it.
Yes.
And I felt obligated, truly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I acted out a lot sexually in my teenage years, and it took me a long time to forgive myself for that. But you know what I've learned as a psychologist is I've never met anyone who didn't make sense. And as we begin to peel back the onion or the layers, everyone makes sense. And we do some things to cope and to survive where we're stuck in different trauma reactions. Oh, yeah. Now sin is still sin. My sin was still sin, but the Lord is so gracious to pull us out of that. And you know what? 1 out of 3 of us are assaulted, raped, or molested, and that is in America. How much more all over the world? And I know we have people listening from all over the world. And I just honor your courage in sharing that, because you should hear the emails and the messages that we get. And so I appreciate you sharing your story.
Yes, thank you. Well, I have shared it from the podium. I do women's seminars, and when it's one that I put on, the very last segment is I ask women to stand up with me if they have been through, survived, and come to a place where they can now help other people who are facing the same hurts and pains. And the biggest crowd stands up for molestation. Yes. And it always makes me weep because it is so prevalent. And if there are any men in the room, they're all on their feet. It is astounding what a problem it is.
Yeah, I think it's 1 out of 5 with men. So they're not too far behind. Yeah. But we do know that women have twice as much depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress syndrome as compared to men. And I do believe the sexual assault and molestation factor is a lot under that. I believe that from the data. I also believe that from being a psychologist and owning a practice, and then the courses I have online. So really appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks.
So we have this history, and then we know that you struggled some after that, right?
Oh yeah. Yes. I've got to put this right here because I met Jesus. Daddy sent his girls and this was before he was a Christian. He sent us to a Bill Gothard basic youth conflict course.
Before he was a Christian.
Before he was, he'd heard it was a good seminar for youth. He believed in good seminars. So he sent us there, and my sisters went the first night. The next day was all day Saturday. They didn't want to go. I drove myself, and I met Jesus there. And I went home and I did what Bill said, and I repented for every way I'd broken the heart of my Lord. I literally felt his hands on my shoulders that night when I was repenting. but I was undiscipled. I was unchurched. 3 weeks later, I fell into sexual sin again, but this time I knew I was breaking his heart. And I had no concept of grace because I really hadn't been, all I had been is to the one seminar. I'd been to some youth groups, but I didn't understand grace. So I thought he was done with me. And I was devastated, more devastated than before.
Well, see, there's the shame of all the sexual things that have been done to you. Like sometimes we couple all that together because there's the sin done against us and then the sin we do. And sometimes the sin we do is in response to the sin done against us. It doesn't mean it's sinful and we need to repent. But you know what I mean? We make sense.
Yes.
You make sense.
Yeah. And I did, wasn't anything I wanted to do. I hated to do it. I cried after I met Jesus. I never had sex that I didn't cry. I mean, when it was outside of marriage, because it wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted to not have to do that. I used to practice saying no at night and just pray and beg, please help me say no. I didn't feel I just couldn't say no. So, yeah.
Well, but that's because in that trauma, you couldn't say no, right? When you were little. Yeah. And that trauma hadn't been processed.
Okay. Yeah. So that marriage, I went off. I married my first husband out of duress, and I was afraid of him. And my parents were not happy. People say, "What were your parents thinking while all this was going on?" Well, they had no idea how I was living. I was so busy. I was not rebellious towards them. I was always willing to do anything they wanted. I was a rule follower, except for that private part that I was so ashamed of and felt so out of control with. But yeah, that marriage landed in 3 years because he beat me up. And Daddy had told me if a man ever laid hand on any of his girls, he wanted us home. Because he had 2 sisters who married raging alcoholics who were extremely physically abusive. And he said, girls, there are 2 reasons I would want you to come home after you marry. And the number one is if your husband lays a hand on you in a harmful way. And he said, and the other one is if they became a habitual adulterer and never, no matter what you did, they never stopped. He said that would be the other one. So I actually went home on both counts. And it was right after our baby was born. She was 5 weeks old when he finally beat me up pretty good. And I almost dropped her on the floor when he was chasing after me to pick me up by my hair. She fell about probably 2 feet into the crib. Yeah, I was just so grateful I got there. But yeah, so that was a really hard thing to get out of, that relationship. Yeah. And single 7 years because I was so torn up about that. Yeah, I mean, I was such a bad marriage.
I know that I do get emails quite a bit from women that feel stuck in marriages or are just getting out, who've been through sometimes emotional abuse and all the gaslighting and questioning your sanity and people are surprised sometimes when you say it's hard to get out. But it is, because there's the cycle of, oh, I'm sorry. And then there's this honeymoon, and then you're walking on eggshells again, and then it happens again. And then there's the values of regarding marriage. And then if we have been assaulted early in life where we went into a freeze, well, what happens when we go through trauma again? We freeze up. We don't fight or flight. We don't flight the way we need to.
Yeah, that's right. And for me, it was physically, it was literally hard for me to leave because the day he beat me up, we lived very much rurally, and we had a party line. Most people don't know what that is, but we had a party line, and he ripped the phone out of the wall and he took my car away. And I had that new baby, and we lived so far from anywhere. But he forgot about the postman. Now, my husband went and collected all the change out of all the nooks and crannies, and he thought I had no money and no way to go anywhere or contact anybody. But he forgot the postman, and the postman paid a stamp for me and sent the letter to my sister saying, don't tell Daddy, but you got to figure out a way to get me out of here. Because Daddy had a gun, and I was afraid he would use it. Yeah. And anyway, so it did work out. One of my sisters came and with a story, and I got out. I got out, but it wasn't. It was by far not the end of my sad venture. Yeah, yeah.
So what happened? Let's maybe do the highlights of what happened next,
Okay.
and then get to where things turned around and
All
what it was
right.
like to be a part of your dad's ministry.
Okay. We'll do that real quickly. So I ended up when I left and went to my parents' house. I was there probably about 13 months, and a pediatrician said my daughter needed her own room in case I ever remarried, because he wouldn't want her to feel replaced by whomever I married. So he suggested I get an apartment, and I did, but I was scared because I was afraid I would have the same problem with men. I didn't have it at mom and dad's house because they got to drop me off the door, but I didn't date much. So sure enough, my fears came true. And I had not gotten on birth control pill because I wanted that relationship with Jesus that I had felt initially. And I got pregnant by a man I barely knew. It was like I couldn't get him to leave. I didn't feel like they would leave unless I gave them what they wanted. So I didn't tell him I was pregnant. I had been involved with Planned Parenthood and county hospitals getting birth control my parents didn't know about when I was 14, 15, 16. So I was very familiar that abortion was an option, and I chose it. I didn't tell anybody. I made my appointment. I went. I asked a friend to keep my daughter under a guise of doing something else. And I didn't think anything about that. It didn't occur to me that it would bother me, but I became a closet drinker almost immediately. My alcoholism began. I started keeping alcohol under the sink. And so now I'm self-medicating the pain and the grief I couldn't express, didn't know how to express. I lost a business that I had because I couldn't work. I was so depressed and grieved. But then, not a year and a half later, pregnant again, this time by a man I dated off and on. I didn't tell him either. And I went and got an abortion very quickly. The doctor couldn't even believe I knew I was pregnant because this was before pregnancy tests like we have today. But my heart was stone cold hard, unfeeling. I was in an emotional place where I wasn't going to feel anything.
Well, right now you have the childhood trauma, and then you have the bullying trauma, and then the sexual experience trauma that was your first and second sexual experiences. And then you have the marriage trauma. So what we're seeing is that unhealed trauma, the cumulative effect.
Yes.
This is why I want to help people so much, Julie.
And by now, I'm getting counseling now between that marriage and the next one, trying to sort out all of this terrible choices that I've been making. And I meet my husband, and I knew on the first date he was the one. I knew it. And he was seeking Jesus the same way that I was. And he was about as messed up as I was. He was an alcoholic too. And I think part of the comfort level was that we could drink with each other as much as we wanted. At any rate, he was smart, he was handsome, he was successful, he was kind. And we got married, and I told him about my abortions in case it was a deal killer for him, but it wasn't. And then the Lord just we started in church and just grew from there. And we were 2.5 years later, God arranged for us to both get sober. I didn't know I was a drunk until I went to Al-Anon and he went to AA, and then I didn't have anybody to drink with. So anyway, we got sober, and that was a journey.
I'm a world-class drinker myself. In fact, so good that I don't do it. So good company.
Okay. Well, I got to tell people the truth is, honestly, Dr. Barber, I am highly allergic to alcohol. And every time I drink, I break out all over in really bad behavior. And that's the truth. So I haven't had a drink since May the 28th of 1986. And I'm grateful to God that that is how it is. And honestly, it was those sharing around the tables of that 12-step program
Mm-hmm.
that taught me to be transparent and open. I didn't feel judged. That was where I really came to terms with who I was, the choices I had made,
Mm-hmm.
that I got in relationship with Jesus in a way that I never had. People say that you shouldn't go to that 12-step program because it's not about Jesus, it's some nebulous God, but the whole thing was designed to bring people around to Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the truth of it. And I saw it happen over and over and over again. So,
That's how I got saved.
and
I
oh, yeah.
I started out in 12-step groups, and
Mm-hmm.
I was very opposed to God. But I began to be like, God, who are you? All right, God,
Mm-hmm.
because every time I would go, like they'd be talking about something I needed, and so I began to see God working in my life. And I don't go to very many 12-step groups anymore, but I mean, only would I go on occasion. But I love in fact, I use some of the 12 steps in my course
Oh, yes.
because like that fourth and fifth and then the eighth and ninth steps
Oh,
are
yes.
so powerful.
Yes, that's where I got set free. And you may have noticed this book, Embrace the Struggle. The
Mhm.
subtitle is Living Life on Life's Terms, and that's very much a 12 step program.
Yes.
People used to ask Daddy, are you in that program? He said, no, but I wrote this with him, and I had a lot of influence and the things that I learned there that helped set me free to feel worthy to have the love of Jesus Christ and to see that, yeah, obviously. And the same thing with the post abortion counseling I ended up having some years later,
Mhm.
when I truly learned the character of God and got taken through a post abortion recovery program that just set me,
Mhm.
it just set me free. And then God, and I've got to tell you this, I went to church one Sunday morning and a friend of mine pulled me over and she said, Julie, I've got to tell you, I had a dream last night and I am to tell you that God cannot use you fully until you've done what you've been asked to do. And the hair stood up on my arms because I had just been asked to go to this post abortion seminar training, Bible study, actually Bible study. And I'd said, no, I'm not going there again. I'd counseled over it. We'd had a memorial service for my babies, my parents. I finally told them they had grandchildren they didn't know about. And I went and did, because at that point, see, I was at a place where I wanted what God wanted way more than I wanted what I wanted. And even though I didn't want to go, I went. And within just 2 sessions and then all of the training in the book during the weeks, I was set free. He unleashed all of that grief and all of that hurt and gave me a love and a joy for my babies and an anticipation of meeting them. And the wall was gone.
Hallelujah. Now, can I ask, during that time,
Yeah.
did you work on the molestation at all a little bit then?
No,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even really on the radar,
Mm-hmm.
still wasn't on the radar. I don't think God let me see that fully until I was way more healed.
Yeah.
I really don't think He did.
One of the things I've
Yeah.
seen in my course and also in my clinical office frequently is when women have been sexually abused and then later on, for whatever, later on they get involved in different relationships and then they have an
Mm-hmm.
abortion. I have felt sometimes where women have put the shame of that abortion, like they can't get past it, and sometimes I think it's because they haven't dealt with the molestation as well,
Oh.
and it's like this whole region of my body feels cursed,
Mm.
and I can't seem to get beyond that post-abortion syndrome, which some people have, not everyone, but
Ah. Mm-hmm.
and sometimes we do have to address the sexual abuse as well
Yeah.
because you
Mm-hmm.
see it's all the same area, right? It's all
Right.
connected. And so
Yeah.
that's just something for anyone who's out there that is struggling, I just want to throw that out there as something that could possibly help. And want to encourage you so much that we have two women with different backgrounds, different childhood, different upbringings, different choices, but we both were very, very broken. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, in the very places where we were the weakest, where we were the most frozen, where we were the most stubborn, where we were the most hurt, where we were the most stuck, do you see what we're both doing?
Yes,
That we are both standing and ministering life from the very places we were most broken. And
that's
so,
right.
yes.
Yes.
And so I want
Yeah.
to encourage you
Mhm.
guys where you're stuck, the place where it's your ceiling and you keep bumping your head. Like for Julie, it was like this sexual sin, right? She kept bumping her
Yeah.
head on it. And then
Mhm.
the alcohol. But it's the very place now. I bet you
Yeah.
sponsor a ton of people.
I don't now.
Uh-huh.
It's been a lot of years, but
Mhm.
I do. I will work with when what I do is today I can help people see that they're in it more than they believe they are,
Mhm.
and help them get help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because it
Yes.
is a little bit like being a frog in a pot that's getting hotter and
Yes.
hotter and hotter, and you don't realize how hot you're in
Yes.
until maybe you get a DWI or everyone's bottom is
Yeah.
different, and I'm very blessed that my bottom was really high for
I'm
alcohol,
too.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, sin will,
Mhm.
the Bible, the Lord spoke to me about alcohol. One of the things he said to me is sin is knocking at your door and you must master it. And
Mm.
and that's in Genesis, and I think that the Lord told that to Cain.
Mm.
And in trying to master it, I tried to be moderate. Oh girl, I failed so bad.
Yeah.
The only way to master that one was to surrender to the Lord and say, I'm going to do what you told me, which is to give
Yes.
this up.
Yeah. And that's so much easier than the other way around. Fortunately, I gave it up and that was it. I mean, I knew, I don't know, God gave me this feeling that if I ever tried cocaine, say, that I would have lost total control. It would have been the end. So I think I had a sense I was so vulnerable. I'm such an addictive personality. I smoked 3 packs a day for 25 years. Did not give that up till I've been sober about 7 years.
Mhm.
But it's been walking that journey. And now I'm struggling. They say one thing will replace another, and the food is still something that I deal with. I've lost the same 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds more times than I can count. But, and then there's still anxiety that I deal with. And I have to say, all right, Lord, this is yours. I'm giving it back to you. And it's been a journey, but God has used it, and I've been blessed to get to work with a whole lot of people on these issues. And I'll say one of my favorite things to do is go speak at 12-step programs, because so many of the women there don't realize it's their past abortions that are keeping them going out, because they haven't dealt with that yet.
Yeah.
And 1 in 3 of us also are post abortive. So
Yeah.
it's a very common issue.
Yes, very common. I'd love to ask you a series of questions
Okay.
before we pray together. Do you have a few more
Please
minutes?
do. I do. I
Okay.
do. Go right ahead.
Okay. What did you learn most from your dad? What was the best legacy that your dad, Zig Ziglar, gave you?
There's so many. It's hard to pick, but I will tell you. I think integrity, the bottom line of integrity, just being. His mother used to say, "Tell the truth until it ever costeth what it will. For he who hides the wrong he did does the wrong thing still." It's about owning it when we mess up. You need to own it. And the sooner you own it, the quicker you're going to feel free of all of that pressure of, oh. So that was a big, big thing that Dad taught us. He taught us you don't steal, you don't lie, you don't cheat. He may have taught us to be a little too nice and polite to our detriment, because
Yeah.
I mean, we're pushovers for sure, but I know that's not what he was after. But the legacy he left, I mean, for me, is his name, is his reputation, and it's because he took care of it. And I do the same thing today. I go out of my way not to give the appearance of sin. Because I understand no matter how strong I think I am, I could be vulnerable in any second. Things can turn around. And the enemy looks for those opportunities. Now, I don't run around in fear. I just know that there are parameters of this is okay and that's not. And living life with his glory in mind will keep you safe and out of all that grief and mess that you've managed to get into prior to.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Julie, many people have lost people through this COVID-19, lost jobs. There's been a tremendous sense of a loss for many people. And you have been through a lot of loss in the past decade. I know we were talking beforehand, you lost your husband. You lost a 4-year-old granddaughter.
Yes, to brain tumor.
And your dad, like within just a couple years. Can you, if you were to speak to someone that just had a big loss, what would you say?
I would say to them that if they don't know Jesus, they should seek him out because he is the great comforter. He cares so much for us. He collects our tears in a bottle. He is really the only thing you can cling to when you are grieving to the point of no words, no, you can't move. He really is the only saving grace in that moment of despair because he is our hope. He is our future. The people who we lose, it's just such a blessing to get to a place where you start to look forward to just knowing that you're going to see them again. If you're a believer, at any rate, that's what it comes to for you. But for when I lost Daddy, he had Alzheimer's, and I had prayed. My sister had prayed on our faces, Lord, please let him come home. He was such a physically healthy man. We were afraid he was going to live it all the way through, and he ended up getting aspiration pneumonia, and he went home before he'd forgotten. He remembered all of our nicknames, and he just had to get long-term care because he forgot how to walk. And he got to go. The Lord let him go pretty early. And because we knew that the way he would want to live was beyond that point, it was so much easier to see Dad go home and be whole. And I want to tell everybody who's listening today, when my father was told he had Alzheimer's disease, he thought just a minute, that he clapped his hands. He said, he said, I can't help but get excited when I think about it. And he said, did you know that the Lord has gone ahead to prepare a place for me that's so amazing I can't even imagine it? He immediately went to the next great thing about what was coming up. And that is a discipline of faith. It's when you know the truth, the reality of what's to come. That was his first response. This is going to be great.
So good. So good.
Yes.
Last question before we pray. To the person who is really down, they're hitting some kind of bottom. Maybe they're like, they just had another drunk, or they just binged and purged again, and they're just tired of it and they want to change, or they just feel like defeated with feeling anxious or depressed. What would you say?
I would say whether they believe in God or not, that they just say, God, if you're real, if you're there, just show yourself to me and just show me how to hang on and help me to know you. Give me direction on where to go. And I find that he always does. You can pray without knowing him or knowing if he's real, but he will always show up. And he may show up in the form of a plumber who came when my husband and I were having a fight about alcohol, who ended up being in the program and told us his whole story, unbidden. We call him God's plumber. That was just one of those steps, but he will show up. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Everybody knows somebody, usually, who's been through it and is clean and sober today.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's pray for these folks watching. If you want to start, I'll finish. And
you bet.
Yeah.
You bet. Father God, we just love you, Lord, and we thank you for this time together and for all of the women and maybe a man or two who are gathered together here today, Lord, to spend this time in search for health and wellness, Lord, and a freedom that only you can give. Father, I just pray that each person is touched with a wisdom and a knowledge of what it is that you would have for them to do, Lord, to help themselves when they're in these positions of pain and regret and suffering. Father, I want the freedom and the joy, and I hope that it shows, Father, that you have given me as I have let go of the different things, Father, that kept me from having the kind of relationship that you desired with me, Father, and that I desired with you. Lord, I just pray that you'll be with each and every one of them in this coming weeks, that you'll protect them from the COVID, that you will show them what to do, Father, to stay safe and to keep those they love safe. Father, I just pray for blessings on each and every one. And I thank you for Dr. Barbara and her ministry and what she's doing, Lord, to help women face the life that we have to live. We do have to live this life on life's terms, Lord, because you aren't, you are with us always, Lord, but we know the situation here on earth and what we have to look forward to, Lord, with you. I just thank you for this time and this ministry and for this invitation to share today, Father. And I just pray you'll use me in any way you like, Lord. Just
thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Father.
Yes, Lord. We speak blessing over every person listening. We speak in places where the past is present, that you would shine your light upon that, and that you would give us courage to walk in healing so that we can clean up the wreckage of our future and turn it into something that won't be wreckage. And I want to thank you for it, Lord, in Jesus' name. Hallelujah. Yes. I haven't thought about that before, but cleaning up the past is like cleaning up the wreckage of the future,
Yes.
because you're preventing it.
Yes.
Julie, thank you so much. What a treasure.
Thank you, Dr. Barbara.
And what a beautiful day to hear your story as we are starting the Hearts Returning Home course today, which does it cleans up all that wreckage of our past. And we do go into the past and look at where needs haven't been met or where there have been assaults or, traumas. And if you want to join the Hearts Returning Home course, you can go to heartsreturninghome.com. We're also starting, because we want May to come, because we think we're going to be coming out of COVID in May. So we're having a May Madness sale early on our All Access Pass to the World Women's Wholeness Summit, where they're half off. So just go to 3wsummit.com and you can get that. And for those of you on my email list, I'm actually on there's a free Purpose Summit that is happening tomorrow that I'm going to be in. And so if you would like access to that, make sure you get on my email list. Go to drbarbaralow.com and get on my email list. And then, Julie, the name of your book one more time.
Well, the one that I co-authored with Dad is called Embrace the Struggle, Living Life on Life's Terms. Mm-hmm. And then my book, which is, it's the title is pretty much a descriptor of what it is. It's Growing Up Ziglar, A Daughter's Broken Journey from Heartache to Hope.
Yeah.
That's Amazon. Yeah.
So we hope that you all enjoy these treats. Tomorrow we have Pastor and Prophet Jane Hammond, and she is going to speak from the heart of God. She's Bill Hammond's daughter-in-law, and so she has that prophetic legacy, and she's going to be speaking from the heart of God on what God is doing now during this COVID-19 crisis. So that'll be tomorrow on the Live at 5 Dr. Barbara, Live at 5 with Dr. Barbara show. We love you, Julie. We love you. We love all you watching. We just cherish you so much. Hi, Cynthia, Rebecca, Catherine, Connie. Aw, precious. We will see you tomorrow. And thank you again, Julie Ziglar. What a treat.
Welcome. Thank you, Dr. Barbara.